China is killing US dollar dominance. More has happened in the last few weeks than the last few decades. It's totally mind-blowing. This could be one of those really big moments in monetary history, as important as the US dollar becoming the reserve currency in of itself. And it's critical to understand what the heck is going on. First, let's talk about the dollar. For decades, the US dollar has enjoyed unrivaled supremacy in global markets. But the cracks are starting to appear. Even CNN is starting to talk about the dollar being in trouble. Yo, you know it's real when CNN's talking about it, right? But why is the dollar so important anyway? Well, it all started back in 1973, and of course it's all about oil. You see, the USA signed a deal with Saudi Arabia that in exchange for US military protection, that Saudi Arabia would only accept US dollars in exchange for their oil. OPEC soon followed suit and the petrodollar was born, meaning that any country in the world that wanted to buy oil needed to have dollars. Thus, the US dollar needed to be held by every single central bank in the freaking world as a reserve asset so that they could use it to buy energy. And it also then became the de facto unit of denomination for most trade internationally in things that weren't oil. This meant that the USA was in a very unique position to be able to run up mind-blowing debt and to print their currency as much as they wanted, which is exactly what the USA has been doing. You see, the USA currently has $32 trillion in debt, a crazy amount. In fact, the interest on that debt will soon be the #1 line item in the US budget. Also, the USA has reportedly printed around 80% of all dollars in circulation in just the last 3 years. That's insanity. This, along with the increasing weaponization of the dollar, it has all put a real strain on the dollar's dominance internationally. You may think what you may of Russia, but when the USA led efforts to seize some $300 billion of Russian central bank funds stored in banks in the West, it was a warning shot. The shot heard around the world for countries like China, India, Brazil, Saudi Arabia, and many others. The message is clear for the BRICS nations and the 15 or so other countries looking to join the BRICS nations. The dollar is a weapon and it will be used against you. And the time to seek alternatives to the dollar is now. And that's exactly what they are doing. So let's break down the big news stories from the last week that prove that the world order is changing and that the dollar's days are fading, the yuan is rising. First, let's talk about Brazil. China and Brazil have agreed to settle all trade in their local currencies. So Chinese yuan and the Brazilian real. So China is Brazil's biggest trading partner and they do about $150 billion worth in annual trade. That means there'll be 150 billion less demand for dollars from those two countries every single year. Then you also have Russia, one of the biggest producers of oil and other top commodities, you know, from foodstuffs to timber in the world. And they recently came out and said that they are going to start settling trade with China in the Chinese yuan, and that they are also open to settling trade with other international partners from Africa and Latin America and South Asia, all these different places in yuan, not dollars. Then we have Malaysia. Today they came out and announced that they're going to be making an Asian monetary fund to counter the IMF, the US-led IMF. So they're going to do that along with China to reduce the dependence on dollars in the region. The Malaysian Prime Minister also said there's no reason to continue to depend on the dollar. And there is this from Saudi Arabia. They have announced that they are going to start pursuing an economic strategy without the USA. They also just joined the Chinese-led Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or the SCO. This is an Asian Economic Union, obviously led by China. Saudi has also said they're open to trade in non-US currencies, i.e. the Chinese freaking yuan. We even just saw the world's first natural gas trade getting settled in Chinese yuan. Now this involved a French gas company using Emirati natural gas being sent over to China, settled in yuan. Now I have to highlight here, it's all huge stuff. And this all happened just the last about 4 weeks or so. A lot of it in the last week. Now, before we discuss what this all means for you, I wanted to let you know about my weekly newsletter. It's called Wealth Mastery. This is an alpha-packed crypto investor report straight to your inbox twice a week. You're gonna get the latest on altcoins, airdrops, NFTs, DeFi, crypto news, technical analysis, and much more. Join our over 60,000 weekly readers and sign up for free using that link down below in the description. So, How much do you need to be worrying about all of this stuff? The dollar's going to zero, get out now. Well, right now the dollar is still king. There is no disputing that. The numbers really speak for themselves. It is still the king of international trade, but yuan is rising. However, the real question is, how long will the dollar remain the king? Times are changing. The trend is moving against, not towards the dollar. All global reserve currencies in the past have failed. And while the downfall of the global dominance of the dollar is not going to happen overnight, it is coming. It is coming, right? The debt and all this craziness, it can't continue. For better or worse, the yuan's probably going to rise up to replace it, or something maybe from the BRICS nations more collectively, but we are going to see a big change happen. Unless the USA does something really dramatic to kind of rally the troops and the international community around the dollar, then the writing's on the wall. So what can you do personally? Well, there are options, and to be clear, every option carries its own degrees of risks. First off, it would just, of course, be to not worry about it. Just stay in dollars, whatever, it's all good. That's an option, right? The truth is, this is all likely going to play out over years, if not decades. And while the last week's been pretty crazy, we can always look at those scary scenarios where it's going to be like Venezuelan-style hyperinflation. It's really not the most likely scenario to play out. The second option, of course, is to start diversifying into, well, Chinese yuan. Maybe not the most terrible idea in the world, but this is just another manipulated central bank currency, new boss, same as the old boss kind of deal. And remember, it's just paper money. And as Voltaire said, all paper money inevitably returns to its true value, zero. So what does this leave us with? Well, either other fiats like the euro, same problems though as all the other stuff, or assets. Three assets in particular are very interesting. First, of course, is real estate. No matter what happens to the central bank funny money, people will still need a place to live. Property will still maintain value and still produce income for people who hold it and rent it. The second, of course, is gold. The yellow stuff, man, it's actually nearing an all-time high, which is crazy. The uncertainty that we're seeing right now in global currency markets, the demand from the BRICS countries for more gold, and particularly what's happening with the US dollar printing itself into oblivion is leading investors back into the safety of gold. I own gold, I like gold, I see it as a nice point of diversification within my broader portfolio. And then of course there's Bitcoin, digital gold. Volatile, yes, oh yes, but also growing in adoption and importance every single day. It's not going anywhere, and it's also personally my single biggest investment. And in my mind, it's also a great hedge against the fiat failure and the sins, oh the many sins, of central banks. Okay, that's it. Subscribe now. I'll see you next time.